Sometimes life feels like a little too much. All of a sudden, everything is loud, even when I'm standing in a quiet room. The noise hurts and I start to get clammy. My hands shake, and I'm not sure who I am or if I'm even real. This is what it feels like at the beginning of an episode of borderline personality disorder. My hope for you today is to walk away feeling like you know what BPD is and how it affects those diagnosed with it. The stigma of mental illness is something that I want to break. I was recently diagnosed with BPD 2 years after being diagnosed with bipolar, so I know that mental illness can be confusing. It goes back and forth sometimes. A lot of mental illness actually go hand in hand. I hope that you can take this information and try to understand people who are depressed or anxious. What they're going through is real, and it's hard to deal with sometimes. It can be debilitating. BPD is a mental illness, typically difficult to diagnose, consisting of several symptoms, and has few treatments. First, I will discuss the diagnostic criteria of BPD, second, the symptoms and treatments, and lastly, I want to explain the way that mental illnesses can be confused with one another. First, I will talk about the diagnostic criteria of BPD. There are 9 specific things looked at when attempting to diagnose someone. 5 out of 9 is enough. According to the Gale Encyclopedia of Medicine, these criteria are unstable mood caused by intense episodes of depression and anxiety, chronic feelings of emptiness, inappropriate and intense anger, difficulty controlling it, impulsive behavior in at least 2 areas, recurrent suicidal behavior, pattern of intense and unstable personal relationships, persistently unstable perception of self, frantic efforts to avoid abandonment, lastly, stress-related paranoia and or feeling disconnected from oneself. One of the main stigmas of BPD is that people with it tend to deny their behaviors in an attempt to get away with it. Those with BPD are often considered manipulative because of the severe symptoms. However, this is stigma. People with mental illness are not inherently bad. They probably lived through a lot of bad things and they're struggling to cope. It's easy to take out stress on the ones we love because we love and trust them, which is why it's important to reach out for help. Reaching out for help can look different. Check in on your friends and know that it's okay to not be okay. No one's perfect and no one should try to be. Second, I want to discuss the symptoms and treatments. BPD consists of recurring episodes, sometimes extreme highs and sometimes very extreme lows. In my personal experience, episodes can be long periods of time where I don't know who I am and I don't believe that I or anything else is even real, which makes it really hard to function and live a normal life sometimes. I get really depressed and dissociative. In the past, I have been suicidal, and that happens a lot with people who have BPD. The highs include the impulsivity, like maxing out credit cards, and other reckless behaviors. I think the unstable personal relationships is one of the harder symptoms to manage. The Gale Encyclopedia of Medicine says psychotherapy is the treatment of choice for BPD, and patients often require long-term services. Therapies include dialectical behavioral therapy, DBT, and cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT. These therapies are used to provide coping skills and help build self-confidence. Medication is also a big part of treatment. Medication is very personal and requires a lot of monitoring. DBT was created specifically for patients with borderline. There are 4 skill groups for patients to work on: distress tolerance, mindfulness, emotional regulation, and interpersonal effectiveness. That comes from the Gale Encyclopedia of Medicine on DBT. The thing about BPD is that treatment heavily relies on a patient reaching out for help. DBT is a therapy that makes the patient work on themselves to better handle their emotions. I personally have been doing CBT for 3 or 4 years now, and I think that what has helped me the most is being held accountable for the goals I set. My therapist and I decide on homework for the week, sometimes as simple as taking a shower, or as complicated as what progress have I made in the last year. I have come to really value my relationship with my therapist, and I think everyone could benefit from therapy. Medication is something I can't comment too much on because it is so personal and requires a lot of monitoring. So you really need to check in with your doctor and make sure that that's the person that you talk to about medication. BPD and bipolar are treated with the same therapies and medications, interestingly enough. Lastly, borderline personality disorder is challenging to diagnose. It's easily confused for other mental illnesses, and people commonly diagnosed with something else first. Personal experience, I was diagnosed with depression and anxiety at 18, bipolar 2 at 20, and BPD most recently at 22. Getting diagnosed requires quite a few interviews with a doctor because usually people don't just have BPD. From the Gale Encyclopedia of Medicine, the clinician will attempt to identify problems that often occur in conjunction with BPD, including mood disorders such as depression or anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, eating disorders, or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Sometimes people are only diagnosed with one disorder before understanding that it's possible to be dealing with more than one condition. Today we talked about diagnostic criteria, symptoms, treatments, and what tends to go hand in hand with BPD. I think it's important to speak up and show others that they aren't alone. Depression and anxiety are increasingly common in the world today, and it's important to know that you're never alone. Other people feel the way that you do, and they can help you at any time that you need. Just look for the resources. And because I mentioned it, I want to include the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. I will put a link to that in the description. Thank you for listening, and I hope that you can take something good out of this.